Welcome to the Court Probationary Services Victim Impact Panel. Over the next hour and a half, it will be necessary for you to take notes on the victims' names, their stories, and important details throughout the course of the video presentation. The multiple choice test at the end of the video will be open notes. You may review and refer to your notes throughout the test. The test may only be passed with a perfect score, 100%. Should you not receive a passing score, you may refer back to the video, take additional notes, and then be tested up to 3 times. Let's begin. The sobering fact is that substance-impaired driving contributed to 21% of all 2017 Missouri traffic fatalities. In 2017, 198 people were killed and 607 seriously injured in crashes that involved at least one impaired driver with alcohol and/or drugs.
So first, a little bit about me. My name is John Hartman. I was born and raised here in Reno. When I was 18, I became an EMT as a result of being raised in the hospital that is now known as Renown Medical. My dad started the Care Flight program. My parents were very heavily involved in the emergency room. My mom was an emergency room nurse, so I grew up with a lot of trauma and a lot of time that I spent in the emergency room. I saw the broken bodies that were caused by drunk driving or drug-related driving. When I turned 18, I became an EMT, and I rode along with the local ambulance companies where I got to physically see the bended cars, the broken bodies, the deaths, the trauma, and I got to see it up close. When I was 18, I was driving home to my parents' house on the Mount Rose Highway, and I witnessed a car pull out of a bar that is down south end of town where the new Walmart is, and I watched it plow into the car in front of me that had a mom and 3 kids in it. As a new EMT, I got out and tried to render aid, and I held the woman's 5-year-old in my arms until he died. In my arms. When I became 21, I got into law enforcement, worked for the Washoe County Sheriff's Office for a few years as a deputy, where I was exposed to the criminal side of it, i.e., pulling over, seeing you guys, arresting you, going to court, going through the trials. So pretty well-rounded. And then 6 years ago this October, I was dating this wonderful woman that we'd been together for about 7 weeks, and we decided to go for a ride on my motorcycle one day up outside of Truckee, and we met a drunk driver head-on. I spent 2.5 months of my life in ICU. I've had 27 surgeries. I have 1 more pending. My girlfriend, who is now my wife, sitting over here, has had 9. And between the 2 of us, $1.6 million in medical. So there is nothing that you guys have experienced that I haven't personally experienced. Very, very knowledgeable on this, and that's part of the reason why I'm here. Try to sit in a pain clinic watching the love of your life get an, and this is a 2-inch long needle that is 8 gauge in diameter, which is basically the size of a number 2 pencil when it's going into you. And they don't just in and give you a small injection. Is there a reason that you won't look over here? Because this is geared specifically towards you. Think about what this is like to have this stabbed into you. Because this is the only thing that gets rid of chronic pain. And they don't just stick it in and give you a little shot and take it out. They stick it in slowly to avoid all the muscles in your back and around your spine so they don't paralyze you with it. And then they inject it. And then they lift it up and they move it a little bit, and they stick it back down in, and they do that 3 times in every spot. And I realize that this is a horrible imposition on your life right now, but you're here because you broke the law. And this is a result of that. This is the stuff that you guys cause to your friends, to your families, to the other drivers on the road. And there is no measure for this kind of pain. You said you had an 8-year-old. Think about watching a doctor stick something like that into your child's body so that they can stop hurting. Does that scare you? It should. It should scare the hell out of all of you. I would rather cut my foot off with a hacksaw than to sit in that pain clinic office one more time while they do that to my wife, while she screams in absolute agony, while she is literally breaking my hand while she's holding it. They gave me fentanyl. Anybody know what fentanyl is? Strongest drug on the face of the planet. 1,800 microgram fentanyl sticks. Take this. That didn't work. Gave me methadone. Anybody know what methadone is? What's it commonly used for? Heroin. Great. Ex-cop and EMT on heroin drugs. Neat. Problem with that is that they give you, if you're a heroin addict, a trainload of it, take away the heroin, they start tapering it down. When they use it for pain control, and it is a very effective pain med, they go the other way. Now, the problem with that is methadone is the most highly addictive prescription on the planet. There is nothing more addictive when it's taken for a long period of time. They hand it out like candy at pain clinics, and these people are driving with you. Because not once did my wife or I ever get told, don't drive.
As we get started, if you wouldn't mind just telling me a little bit about Emily and describing her personality to us.
She had an amazing laugh that she just filled up the room. It was just a loud, throw your head back kind of laugh. She'd walk in the house and say, "What's to eat, Mama?" I thought she was always hungry. She liked to eat.
Emily was kind of shy at first, and I was shy also. So at first we didn't do much talking. And then the second time I met her, I just absolutely loved her. Like, she brought over some cookie dough to my house, and she had a spoon, and she's just eating it.
She was a very laid-back person, very easy to talk to, just sweet, just really funny, beautiful.
She loved to be outdoors, whether it was camping, hiking, fishing.
We went camping together, and we'd walk our animals together. As a group, we all got puppies. My idea, of course.
She always calls her dad Padre. It was kind of a thing that they always had. She was a great big sister.
She was always there for me. She always listened. She was just one of those people you could just really tell anything to.
She was the mom of the group, you know, always pushing everybody to want better for themselves. I don't know how, I don't know why. I just feel like she was put in my life because I needed her.
She just had a big heart, just cared a lot about everybody. She was just beautiful. Beautiful outside, beautiful inside. He was traveling from his home in Nashville. I don't know where he got on the road wrong exactly, but from the 911 reports, he'd been traveling the wrong way for at least 5 miles before he hit her. There was a car in front of her and a car behind her, and they were in the right lane. The car in front of her, from what I understand, put their hazard lights on and started slowing down because they seen him coming, and then Emily immediately got in the left lane. She didn't know what was going on, and immediately when she got in the left lane is when he hit her head on and took her life and his own. Her accident was the night before Thanksgiving, November 22nd. She left work and she was going to Seymour to see her boyfriend. She never showed up, and so he had gotten worried. and he went out driving and came across the accident.
Emily's boyfriend at the time called me and told me that he needed Dawn's number. And I was like, why do you need Dawn's number? I was like, I'm not giving you Dawn's number. And then he was like, Heather, I really do need it. And then I was like, then you're gonna have to tell me why. He said, Emily didn't make it. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, there was an accident. Emily didn't make it. And I remember sitting in the car with the phone up to my ear. I don't know what happened, but the phone dropped. And it was just instant tears. I was angry. And it was like the phone didn't stop ringing afterwards.
I think it was about 1:30. My phone started ringing, and it was one of her friends. Something told me to pick it up, and so I did. And she told me that Emmy had been in an accident and that she didn't make it, that she died. I remember getting mad at her because I thought it was a joke. I remember hanging up on her, and about that time the doorbell rang. The doorbell rang and it was 2 officers standing at my door. And they came in. And I just remember saying, please tell me it wasn't true. Please tell me it's not true. And they said, is Emily Anglin your daughter? I said yes. And they said, I'm so sorry, she died in an accident tonight. A head-on collision. Honestly, we just sat here on the floor as a family holding each other and just trying to comprehend what was going on. You're so numb, you don't know what the next step is because nothing like this has ever happened before. The police officer did that night give Chad a card and told Chad he needed to call them at some point because that's where they took her body. And so he did, and they said that we could go view her. Chad's dad drove us to Seymour Funeral Home so that we could see our daughter laying on a gurney. She was so beautiful. She just looked like she was sleeping. She had a few cuts, but she just looked like she was sleeping. Just like, wake up. Just wake up. This is such a nightmare. Just wake up. I didn't find out that he was a drunk driver till 11 weeks later because there was no evidence of alcohol at the scene. The toxicology test and reports get pushed back. And so it was 11 weeks exactly on a Wednesday when I was at work when I got the phone call from the police officer that was working the scene, calling me to tell me that he was very drunk. His blood alcohol level was 0.298, and that he was very sorry. It took me right back to that day she died because I was just getting to the point where it was thinking it was an accident, and then for it to come back and smack you in the face again, and that it could have been prevented. She was just driving that road to go see her boyfriend, doing absolutely nothing wrong. She was doing absolutely nothing wrong. She just happened to be on that wrong road at the wrong time.
I miss her smile. I just miss hearing her laugh and her voice, and she's not here anymore, and it's sad. It's frustrating, it's unbelievable, it's not fair. Like, regardless, you should never drink and drive. I've always felt that way. But after it happening to my friend, I just want people to know that it's really just not worth it. It's really not. Because that could be you. You could have killed someone, or you could die, you know? Like, it's just not fair.
It's not just about you. There are other people out there who matter too. And that night, that guy only thought about himself.
There's this big empty hole where Emily was. People need to know that doesn't just change the drunk driver's life, but it changes other people's lives. It changed our life forever. It'll never be the same, and the pain never stops. It's here all the time. Some people say it gets better. I don't know if it does. It hasn't yet. It's not any better at all.
Let's talk about personal experience so we can kind of make this a little more this is what can happen to you. Our first speaker tonight is a man by the name of Don. Don has been with our panel for many years and is not quite a complete quadriplegic, but is in a wheelchair, has no function of his legs, limited function of his arms. And he will talk to you about his story and how he became involved in this.
How many of you know somebody in a wheelchair? How many of you want to be in a wheelchair? I started drinking when I was 15 years old. I started breaking horses when I was 17. Started hunting when I was 12. Fishing since I was 8. My life was in mountains, around animals, ranches, worked at pack stations. I know the Sierras like the back of my hand. Been into every little lake you can imagine. Even lakes with not even on the map I've been. By the time I was 11th grade in high school, I was out of control, full-blown alcoholic. Liked to do my own things, didn't like school. Rather go fishing, hunting, rather work. So I ended up dropping out. By the time I was 25, I lost all my friends. Family gave up on me because all I did was work and drink. That was it. Work hard, drink hard, play hard. That was my life. Finally, moved to Winnemucca, Nevada, and then went to work in Elko to work on the third biggest ranch in Nevada, about 4.5 million acres. It was the best job I ever had in my life because you can't grow alcohol on trees, and you can't find drugs out in the middle of nowhere. I was into pie at first, and I got into heavy with cocaine and crank. And rich man drug, and I wasn't that rich, so I had no money. I was pretty well strapped all the time. But because I was up in line shacks and cabins and up on myself working on fences and working with cows, I was able to sober myself up, get off the drugs, and realized I knew what I wanted to do in life. And that'd just be a full-time cowboy, make a little bit of money, work hard, but have a good life. On the night of July 3rd, 1991, my life would change forever. My brother and his 3-year-old daughter came by the ranch so we could go to his house to spend the 4th of July, watch a parade, hang out together, watch the fireworks. It was going to be a good weekend planned. I haven't spoke with my brother for about 1.5 years because of all the stuff I was into, and we kind of had it out. So it was a good makeup time. But when he picked me up, he probably drank a 6-pack on the way there. Probably had another 4 beers as we stopped by this lake so my niece could fish and play in the water and we could catch up. He offered me a beer. I drank about a half one. I don't know if any of you ever stop drinking and then try to drink again. It's the first taste of beer, it kind of makes you sick to your stomach. You gotta get used to that taste again. So I had a half beer and threw it away. Well, he drank another couple more beers, and we were off. Jump in the truck. Because I used to work 7 days a week, 12 to 15 hours a day, I was pretty tired, and I fell asleep. I heard my brother yelling, "Hold on!" Truck with fish chains from one side of the road to the other. Then everything went black. When I woke up, I was halfway through the passenger window. I wanted to go get help. I wanted to get out, see if my niece was okay, see if my brother was okay. I tried to move my hands, and they wouldn't move. I tried to move my legs, and they wouldn't move. I went, oh my God, what am I going to do? I asked God to help. And then I heard my niece crying for her daddy. And I calmed her down and said her daddy was coming. My brother finally got to the truck, and he broke his hand trying to break the window so he could get into the window so he could pull her out. Then he came to my side and wanted to pull me out. I said, no, my neck's broken. So I told him to go get help. And they went. Luckily for us, a car came by and they went and got help. When the ambulance got there, the paramedics, they forgot one important part of the equipment, a neck collar. Because we're way out in the middle of nowhere outside of Battle Mountain. The only one that had it would have been the ambulance, and they already used it with their next patient before me and forgot it at the hospital. They had to roll 2 towels up, put them on either side of my neck. Fireman had to put his hands around my neck, the towels, and then they duct taped his hands. Then they cut me out of the truck and got me to the ambulance. When I got to the hospital, Battle Mountain, I laid on the table and the doctor asked me if I could move my fingers. I couldn't move them. Asked me to raise my arms. I just laid there. Asked me to wiggle my toes, raise my legs. I couldn't move nothing. I just laid there. They took a sharp instrument and started poking me from my toes all the way up to my chest. And finally, up above my nipple line, I was able to feel. They finally, they gave me x-rays, came back and said my neck's broken. They had to fly me to Reno. I cracked my head open pretty good. Had like 16 stitches and 20 staples. Got to when they flew me, I went into the airplane. The nurse there asked me about how I was and if I was comfortable. I said, yeah. I asked her if I would ever walk again. She couldn't answer me. She just held my hand. And I couldn't even feel it. I couldn't even feel her hold my hand. When we got to the hospital, they gave me x-rays, more tests, and came back and said I shattered my vertebrae, the 4th and 5th, which I was 2 away from being a Christopher Reeve. I went through surgery. Result, 2 steel plates, piece my hip bone, and 4 screws to keep my spine together. The doctor and surgeon told me I'll never walk again. I will never have control of my bowels or my bladder. Most likely, I'll probably end up in a nursing home for the rest of my life, having someone feed me. I went to rehab and work, and by luck, I was able to get a little bit more back. I was able to do so much on my own. They taught me how to teach people how to dress me, how to give me a shower, how to take care of my personal care. I live on my own, have my own apartment. I do pretty good. I have to have someone come in and get me up in the morning, give me a shower, help me with my bowels and bladder, and then put me to bed at night. If they don't show up, then I gotta wait till somebody show up to put me to bed. I've been left up all night before. I've been left in bed all day before, and it happens all the time. I rely on people to help me every day of my life. I was able to learn how to do certain things. I can feed myself, pick some things up. I was able to get the Reno Rodeo Association bought me a saddle so I can get back on a horse again. But I had to have someone help me get on this horse. Then they had to Velcro me in the saddle, strap me in. I can barely ride, but it's still pleasurable. I enjoy it. I've been water skiing, snow skiing. I have scuba dive. I keep myself pretty busy. But imagine where you have to have someone every day of your life to rely on. For a little bit of independence, I had to rely on somebody. I want you to think about when you're back out and you leave this program. And I'm not sure what the percentage is, but there's a percentage of you who will be back out there drinking and driving and doing the same thing again. And while you're doing that, I want you to think about this. As you're driving, hammered or high, you look at that person next to you, your best friend, your wife, husband, girlfriend, boyfriend, your child. Look behind you in that child seat, that little baby, innocent baby, that child who is helpless, who rely on you to help that child because their independence belongs to you. And as you go around that corner, you take a good look at me and you take a good listen to the other speakers, and then your vehicle wreck. And this is what's going to happen, not you. The percentage is you're going to be fine. But then you get to understand what my brother lives with every day of his life. What he done to his little brother. It will never go away. I will never walk. I don't care what the government says about this or this and this. I will never walk. There's no cure. There's no cure for spinal cord. You look around the malls and around. There's a lot of people out there in wheelchairs, just like me. And you know most spinal cords are because of drugs and alcohol. Driving, either vehicles, motorcycles, or diving, because they're high or they're drunk. And that's a fact. All I ask you, please, take this program serious. Take a good look at me and listen to the other speakers, because you don't want to ever have to live what I do every day. Thank you.
I remember, like, after our dates, or he would take me home, and we would call each other, and we'd have a million more things to say, and we just hung out all day long. And sometimes if we wouldn't talk to each other, we'd, like, go back to each other's house to meet each other. We were just very in love, and just, he was my very best friend. We were hanging out, and I remember looking at him and feeling so in love with him, and I was like, I want to start a family with you. I remember just thinking what a great dad he would be. He's so kind and so loving. And so we decided to get married. So we're driving, and it's 1 a.m, and we're talking about our life together, and a drunk driver got on the freeway going the wrong direction. And she had been to a couple bars, I guess, and so she got on the freeway on the off-ramp, and so she was heading straight toward traffic, and she just hit us head on. And I found myself outside of the car before the ambulance got there anyway, or anything, and I remember just screaming, like, what happened? Where am I? And I looked at my hands, and I was, like, covered in blood, and I was, like, touching my face, and it was, like, burning, and, there was just blood, like, all over the ground everywhere, and I didn't know where I was, and I was looking into the night, and I don't remember being able to see anything. It was just so dark, and so I felt so alone, and everything was, like, burning, and it just was, like, out of a horror movie. Like, I'm covered in blood, and so I kind of see the ambulance lights, like, off in the distance, and I don't know what's going on, and so they come pick me up. And they put me on the stretcher, and they're asking me, push with your feet on our hands. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they're testing to see if I'm paralyzed. And I'm like asking them, is my foot moving? Like, I know why you guys are testing. And they said, yeah. And I said, where's Chris? And they said, oh, someone else is working on him. And I said, where is he? And someone else is working on him. And I remember I was so cold. I was like freezing and just shaking, and they were cleaning me up, and I was covered in little shards of glass. And they were taking a wet towel and damping, like patting it on my skin to get the glass off. And I go to the hospital, and they said, where's your family? Can we call him? And I said, yes, but where's Chris? They said, someone else has it. It's working with him. And a police officer came in the room, and he was investigating the accident. And I told him that I didn't remember anything. And then when he was about to leave, I said, wait, was Chris the only one killed? Because I knew, and nobody would tell me, and I just felt like I had to. And so he said yes, and that's when I found out. I just remember, like, just screaming. My heart just broke.
Right in the middle of a sentence, I said to this girl I was talking to, pointing to my wife, now that's the kind of woman I'd like to marry. I went over and danced with her, and we danced all night, and I asked her out for the next day, and basically we never stopped dancing for 21 years after that. We had just celebrated our 21st anniversary about 10 days before. And one of my daughters and one of my sons and I were performing at Hale Center Theater. As we were leaving our cast party that night, we started driving home. The following morning was going to be Christmas Eve, and so we started on our way home and decided we needed to pick up some stocking stuffers. We were just going through a green light, and we were in a 1997 Mercury Sable. So there were 6 of us in a relatively small car, and all of a sudden a large red truck came speeding through the intersection through the red light and hit us broadside. I remember, looking up and wondering what they were thinking and what was going on when I saw the truck coming. And it just all happened so fast. And I remember being hit. I remember the feeling, I just felt like my body totally shut down. Like I could feel myself not being able to breathe, and I could actually sense my heart not beating. My wife, when she first saw the truck coming, she just shouted out, "Oh no." And she threw herself on my daughter to make sure she'd be safe. I called out to my wife. I just said, Cheryl? 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 And there was no response. When the paramedics came, one came to each of the front doors. I remember the first one looked at my son. He just took a quick look at him He looked at the other paramedic and shook his head. And I knew that he was dead. The other looked back at him and nodded as if to say that my wife was gone too. I told them that my daughter was still alive, and so they hurriedly tried to get her out. I was actually lying in a hospital bed in the emergency room when they came about 4 hours later and let me know that she was also gone. You know, my wife and I had actually lost 5 of our 9 children prior to that accident. And each time we went through that experience, I think one of the things that made it possible for me to endure was the fact that I had her by my side. To lose 2 at once that I knew so well and had known for so long was more difficult than anything we'd done before. But to lose her at the same time, my wife of 21 years, was beyond description.
Soccer. He was a big soccer player. He probably would have been with Real by now, I'm positive. Yeah, he was inspired to be a soccer player, and that's what he did, and he did it well. He did it well. These guys went to every soccer game he had.
He never failed to come up to the family members, hug them, and give them a kiss, and said, "Thanks for coming."
Yeah, he had a lot of friends. He was very important to me. He was my first nephew, and I remember the day he came into this world, and we'll never forget the day he left. So, been quite impacting. January 15th, 2000, Christopher and 2 of his friends were at a stoplight in a Jeep, and they were hit from behind. They determined that the point of impact was probably about 75 miles an hour, catapulted the Jeep, which immediately burst into flames, and threw them up in the air, ended up in oncoming traffic upside down on fire. The drunk who hit them actually was able to get out of his truck, and there was a couple witnesses on the scene that were trying to help my nephew and his friend that were in the Jeep. One of the witnesses were able to pull out one of the boys, and my nephew Christopher was trapped, and he actually burned to death while the drunk went home and went to bed as if nothing happened.
And when they finally brought Chris in at the mortuary, we was there planning the memorial service. And I seen that white hearse. I asked that woman, I said, "Is that Chris?" She said, "Yeah." He's downstairs on a table. We're through. You go down and feel him. Do not lift that blanket. Whatever you do, don't lift that blanket. In fact, I'm going to send somebody down with you. So that's how we got to say goodbye to our grandson, was touching him through the blanket.
We were all at a family function at West High School here in Salt Lake City, and our daughter was in the play, and so we invited Natalie, our daughter Natalie, and her husband Michael, and their 2 small children, MJ and Matthew, had come up for the play. And so it was a delightful evening, and so we all parted company around 10 o'clock or 9:45. And the next thing that occurred, I was at home. We were only 10 minutes away from the high school, And the next thing happened is that we received a call. And it was from our daughter. She simply said, "Dad, I've been in a very serious accident. 2 of my children are being life-flighted to Primary Children's Hospital. One of them may not make it. I have to go with my husband, Michael, who to another hospital. We're being transported to another hospital. Will you meet the children and take care of them? I have to go. Goodbye." And I immediately went with Jane to Primary Children's Hospital. And when we got there, they were not there. However, Primary Children's Hospital knew they were coming. They had 2 emergency rooms ready. They had all the doctors and nurses ready. And a poignant moment for me was to look out over the city and see the helicopters, medical helicopters, both of them, coming together across the valley and from about 35th South and I-15 across the university and land at the Primary Children's at the University of Utah Medical Center, not knowing which child was in trouble. Turned out that both of them were in trouble.
And MJ, her 2.5-year-old, had not wanted to be in a car seat. And she said, "You have to stay in your car seat. You'll be safe. You'll be safe." And she described to me how when the terrible impact hit and how she was so, for a few seconds, just almost unconscious. And then she turned and looked, and she saw MJ in the back. And his legs had been broken off right at the hip, both his legs. And his feet were stuffed back behind his ears. And she said his eyes were just huge and filled with horror. That here he was, and she could tell he was in shock. He was to be safe, and instead of safe, he was crushed almost in this terrible blow. And she said, she looked back, and Matthew, he was 4 months old. His car seat was crushed up, and as she struggled to free him from his car seat and held him in his lap, she said that she could feel a pulse, but he didn't cry. She could feel he was breathing, but it wasn't regular. And she said she had this horrifying feeling that he was going to die.
They struggled with both of the children. And then came the news that they assembled everybody and said the baby just is not going to make it. Their injuries are just terrific. But they struggled with them. And probably the most poignant moment for me was to watch Michael and Natalie have to pull the decision made to pull the life support from their child. 24 hours earlier, they had been a happy, wonderful family, having a loving child and baby. And 24 hours later, you have to pull the life support off the child, watch the child's color turn blue, and say goodbye.
It was so painful to us realizing that our grandchild that we loved so dearly and we were so bonded with and loved to hold him and talk to him. And we had such great hopes for him and to see him struggle for life. And it was so painful for us, but to see the sorrow of our daughter and the heartbreak was just almost more than we could bear. And I remember after he died, we came home from the funeral, and that night, I was so filled with pain. I'd never felt such grief or such pain. It was so intense. I thought I would explode. And I thought, I just got to go outside and shout it out and scream it out.
Robert was just, I think, a typical teenager, and me and him spent a lot of time together. And he had a great love of the outdoors, of hunting and shed hunting. You'd go out and pick up horns off of deer and elk that they've shed, and he was just real fun to be around, and got along well with everybody. I mean, he
really quick-witted, just loving kid. You could go on the mountain with him, and he could tell you every single plant and when they seed. And I mean, he was just exceptionally smart for only being 17. He was more of a 35-year-old in a 17-year-old body. He was just an amazing kid.
It seemed like I'd only been asleep 5 minutes, but it was probably more like an hour, and the phone started ringing. and it's about 4 o'clock in the morning. So I just sat there and listened to it ring, and I heard my dad get up and went in and answered the phone, and I couldn't really hear what he was saying, but I could hear him, and I could tell by the way he was saying things that something was wrong. So immediately I thought my grandpa had passed away because he'd been really sick, which is his dad. And so I got up and started to walk down the hall, and as I started to come down the hall, my mom came out and walked in, and my dad was off the phone by this point, and she's like, "Bob, what's wrong?" And he couldn't speak, and she asked again, and all of a sudden my dad just yelled that Robert was dead.
Everything changes in just that
fast.
That minute, because you look at birthdays, and for your whole life they've been a celebration of life. Another year with this person, and now it's like today. I'm here. It's my birthday. My birthday's anymore. It's another year since I heard my son's voice.
Yeah.
Or I got to see him, or I got to
touch him.
So it changes. There's so many things in your life that just will never be the same.
And we beat it into our kids' heads. Don't drive drunk. You don't want to live with the fact that you may have killed somebody. But I never said to my kids, don't get in with anybody drunk either. Never said it.
You don't get in with anybody who's been drinking, and it doesn't matter if they've had one or if they've had 12 or how many times they've done it before. You just don't do it because you aren't in control of that vehicle. Take the keys, chuck them, hide them. I mean, do what you can do to make sure nobody drinks and drives, because you don't know whose life you're going to save and how many people that one life is going to affect.
Looking back into 2006, 2005, mine was kind of the idyllic family. I had 4 children at the time. My wife, we had tried for many years to have a 5th child, and at the time of the accident, she was about 5 months pregnant, and so we finally had a success. We had miscarriages and other issues that were very devastating to go through, but it was an incredibly happy time for my family. I had the unfortunate experience of being awake immediately after the crash. And by immediate, I mean I could still hear the glass falling around the car when I came to and realized what had happened. But as soon as I was able to get some motion in my body and be able to, where I could move my hand, I turned it off, and that's where I was able to then, after some struggle, see that my wife was not moving in her seat, as she kind of was cuddled in the fetal position in the passenger seat. With her, I was able to check for a pulse, which there wasn't any, and I was able to see the last breath leave her body. After some additional struggle, I was able to turn and see into the back seat, and my son Benjamin had a significant wound on his head that once again wasn't bleeding. And anyone who's had even a slightest head injury knows that they bleed a lot. And so I just, in my heart, knew and thought and sensed that the same fate had befallen him as well. My daughter, who was seated in the middle in the back seat, was basically lifeless. Her head was tilted forward and her hair was draped over her face. But she wasn't moving. I didn't know, and it had no way to check whether she was alive, but I just sensed that she was gone as well. I didn't know anything about my son Sam, and oddly enough didn't feel to even be concerned until when I was being extricated from the car, I heard him cry out. And that was something I hung on to in my drive up to the emergency room. I was able to see the car that had hit us before I was taken out of the vehicle. It was on its roof about 40, 50 feet up from up the road. But unfortunately, the teenage drunk driver who was driving that vehicle didn't come back to render assistance. In fact, he knew he had hit somebody and walked away from the accident. And so that was, I think, had an impact on me as well about, the mind of one who's in that, or puts himself into that situation to not only drink, but to kind of selfishly endanger the lives of others. And that selfishness carries on beyond the accident. I was in an ICU. I kind of excused myself against the doctor's wishes out of the ICU because I wanted to be with Sam so desperately, and also with my son Michael, that I walked from the University Medical Center over to Primary Children's where they had Sam, and he was completely sedated, and they were monitoring his cranial pressure. When he was released 10 days after, we took him home, and I still had not told him anything about the accident, and I laid him in my bed, actually. And it was then that he finally looked up and he said, "Where's Mom?" And that's when I told him that we had been involved in a crash, and that his mother and his brother and his sister were dead. And, it was a state of shock for him, immediate shock. And, it took a long time for him to finally really understand the impact of what had happened to our family. Only because frequently he would just kind of come to me like it was a dream. There were times I could feel him grabbing onto me, wondering if this was just a bad dream and if I was going to suddenly disappear. I think he still struggles a lot with that, in that, I can't travel very far without a phone call. And it's just, am I still there? Am I still alive? Am I still part of his life? And so he struggles with that significantly, wondering what he can count on going forward. Quite frankly, I struggle with that too. This drunken teenage driver who had hit us was actually at an ice cream establishment very close to our home. And he was there with his teenage friends. And not only had he been drinking, but he had been drinking for some time. He was kind of a hardened alcoholic. But his friends knew that he was this type of a drinker. And not only did they know it, but they knew that he would drink and drive. And on this particular night, he was with quite a few friends. And he was there, and there was he wanted to leave his friends with his girlfriend. He wanted his girlfriend to come with them, and they wanted to head off. And so he actually took her and got her into the car. But her friends pulled her out of the car, thinking that she could get hurt with he in that state. But they didn't take the keys. They didn't stop him from driving. And so in their mind, it was almost like, well, if that's what he wants, if he's going to pursue this, then, it's his own choice, and the consequence will just be his. And if he gets in an accident, it's, too bad for him. At some point, you've got to decide that given that situation, you'll be the one to step in and take the keys. You'll be the one to step in and at least volunteer to drive. You might have gotten away with it once, twice, God forbid 5 times, who knows how many times, but it's going to catch up with you. And you'll be in a situation where you will look around and those lives will be gone. And it'll be because of you. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. I wouldn't wish to hang that on anyone's neck. And yet it goes on all too frequently. People thinking that they're above it or that it won't ever happen to them, especially when they've been drinking. I'm here to tell you that it does, because it's happened to me in my life, in my family. The deaths mount up. That's not a place where you want to be, especially when it is so preventable.
Before the accident, Tabitha had graduated high school. She was going to college to be a veterinarian. She was the top female junior bowler in the area, with her high game being a 300. She liked to fish, she liked to hunt. She was an outdoorsy person, but she could still be girly with the rest of them. She was fun, still full of life, knew what she wanted to do in life, and she would do everything she could to get there.
You know, we're sisters. We fought growing up. Who doesn't fight with their siblings? But then when I moved out, we grew closer and we would hang out, we'd go bowling, we'd go see a movie.
I get a call at about 1:45, December 5th in the morning, that Tabitha was in an accident and I need to get to the hospital. Her and some friends had gone out bowling, and they were on their way home that night. She was sitting as a passenger in her own car, and she took the full impact of this Ford F-150. He ran a flashing red light. The impact threw her car down into the ravine and landed on the driver's side of the car. Everything going through my mind, is she going to be okay? How bad is this? I'm thinking maybe a broken arm or something like that. But I know I couldn't think straight, and I remember Devin saying, "Mom, let's just go." I get to the hospital and called her dad, I called her sister, and said, "I don't know what happened. Tabitha's been in an accident. They've not told me anything. You might want to come."
We walked in, she was cut up still. They hadn't cleaned her. She had blood all over her face, all over her clothes.
She had a lot of internal injuries that she needed to go into immediate surgery. She ruptured her spleen, she ruptured her bladder, multiple fractures, and he said, but that's not the worst of it. She has a traumatic brain injury, and there's evidence she may never wake up. My girls broke down, and I remember thinking, I have to be strong for them.
We're all sitting in the waiting room while Tabitha was in emergency surgery, and we got a police phone call, and they confirmed that it was a drunk driver.
It was tough. You know, it was tough to see her the way she was, a machine breathing for her, and that this was totally preventable. He got a DWI. He went to jail immediately. He got arrested on the scene. He bonded out that night. So that night, while Tabitha's fighting for her life, he was out, I'm assuming, enjoying life.
I was angry at him, but I was more worried for my sister, not knowing if she was going to wake up.
She started coming to and waking up while she was in ICU, but it was always lights on, nobody home, kind of. She was just staring. As far as her actually waking up, and I knew she was there, when the girls were little, we always gave the I love you sign, and then they would give it back to me. And I said, I love you. I'll see you in the morning, you know. And she comes up with her left hand and she does the best she can and gives me the I love you. And that was on the 27th day. I knew that right then everything was going to be okay. That was the day I knew she was in there. We spent almost a total of 4 months in the hospital. He is currently in jail. There was 3 people total in Tabitha's car. He had a passenger in his vehicle, so there was 4 people injured in this accident. So he had 4 counts of assault. He got sentenced to 5 years. You know, this guy took my daughter's life. The Tabitha that we knew that day is gone. This is the new Tabitha. She is totally dependent on somebody for everything. She cannot walk, she cannot talk properly, she has a feeding tube. We had to teach her everything. We had to teach her how to eat again, we had to teach her how to swallow. You know, I mean, she was like a 18, 19-year-old newborn. She needs lifelong therapy. So we were just going to kind of wing it and go wherever the services are provided. At home, we still have to do a daily program with her just to maintain what she's gained.
I am a part-time caretaker for Tabitha. I come in the mornings about 6:30, and I get Tabitha ready, give her a shower, get her dressed, feed her breakfast, do therapies if we have time. That way Mom can focus on herself, get herself ready for work. On days that I have off completely, I'll stay at home with her.
This is a lifelong sentence for Tabitha. She will never be 100%. We are aware of that.
Beforehand, she was going to get married, she was going to have kids, she was going to be a veterinarian, she was going to live a normal life. And now she's totally dependent on everybody else. She just loves animals, and to not be able to follow her dream of becoming a veterinarian, it's heartbreaking.
I don't know. I mean, her goals right now are to walk and talk. Her goals have totally changed. So with life, you know, we changed.
My sister's life was changed forever, so you don't want to be the drunk driver who changes someone else's life, and you really need to watch out for drunk drivers.
It's not an accident. This was totally preventable. Please don't drink and drive. It doesn't just change the victim, it changes the whole family.
Please don't drink and drive.
First of all, I always like to look around the audience, because after all, we're experts at this, you know. It's your first time here, son? Been here before? You've seen us before, probably. So we've only done this a little over 100 times, looking at someone just like you and you. And always, I'm interested to know who doesn't really give a damn. You? How about you? You? How about you? Feel like Superman? Think you could stop that car? So do I. See what it did to that Jeep? We got a lot in common. You and I, all of you. You don't want to be here tonight, but you got to be. You don't want to be, but you got to be. You too. We don't want to be here tonight. We got to be. We got a message for you. If you pay attention, it could save your life. It could save you from the cemetery. Ever think about that? Probably not when you were having that drink. No, John said, get to know your neighbor. What you were getting to know was a potential killer. You think that with your pistol, you could do that kind of damage? You know, the challenge we have is trying to get you to pay attention and care. I mean, you live in a land of freedom. You got men overseas getting killed to give you your freedoms of choice. And what right do you think that you can conduct yourself in such a way that you could kill yourself or somebody else? Does that ever occur to you? Or do you even give a damn? How about you? You care? You care? Because if you don't, I got a great solution for you. Do you care, son? How about you folks? You think this is a waste of time? You think we get up here and go through this? How about you? You getting the message, son? Sorry. Me too. No. But for those of you who don't care, I understand the U.S. Army is looking for a few good people, men and women. You know what? They'll train you to kill. They're going to give you a gun, and you're going to send your rear end overseas. But the difference is, when you get overseas, the person that you're going to be coming up against is going to have a gun too. And he's going to want to kill you. And you, or any of the rest of you that really don't give a damn. So I'd suggest in the morning, call up the U.S. Army and get with it. And get the hell off our streets when you've got the weapon at the bottom of your foot. Why don't you try that if you don't give a damn? It's a license to drive, folks. It's not a license to kill. And I'll tell you something. You may not make it home tonight. You know that? What'd John tell you? Only getting about 10% of them. 250 of you in here tonight, that's 2,500 out there. Or someday, you might be up here. You might be speaking in my place. And you lose somebody in your family. Or maybe you'd be in prison because you killed somebody. How about you? Big band there. No, don't look around. I'm talking to you, the gray. You give a damn? It's a waste of time? I hope we don't see you here again.
I've watched you sleep through this whole evening. I can't believe it. You listened to Dawn speaking and Cordy speaking of her daughter, and nothing of it is important to you. Do you have children? I want to introduce DJ to you. Mostly so you can get a glimpse of the kind of person he was and what he had to offer, the beautiful gift that he was to us. And to give you some sense of the change of life in the blink of an eye. You know, this beautiful summer evening, and here we are in this room. And we're all here. It's a common thread between us. It has to do with driving, drinking, drugging, life, your life, our lives. And for those of you who are parents, I would imagine that most of you have a fairly good idea where your child is this evening. And Jim and I have an absolute where our child is. His body is our Mother of Sorrows Cemetery on North Virginia Street, buried in his homecoming suit. And I pray his soul is with the good Lord. And I feel that he is with us all the time. But you know, it's just a thought. There's nothing physical there. And there's no voice. And the voice that we hear of DJ is on that video in his junior year. DJ was killed April 2nd, 1996 on Tuesday. And until probably about 9 months ago, I haven't been able to watch that TV interview, but I just wanted to hear his voice so badly. Deej was a senior at Bishop Manogue High School when Manogue was over this direction before they moved out on South Virginia. And he was very academically involved and sports involved and involved just with humanity. He was president of the National Honor Society. He'd been president of his classes throughout high school. He attended Boys State, a Nevada high school scholar. He was quarterback and co-captain of his football team. This is DJ in his senior year at his football banquet. And this is the end of DJ's life on the freeway not very far from here. DJ was accepted to the University of Notre Dame, and as the video said, he just received that acceptance letter the evening before. So he didn't even get to think about it for 24 hours, something he'd waited for years. He also was accepted to the University of Washington in their honors program, University of Colorado, and Oxford University in England. And the acceptance to Oxford, DJ did not know about because that letter arrived 2 weeks after we buried our boy. He was running track at Reed High School on Saturday. And he was in a mortuary on Tuesday. So what did this boy have to give? And what did this life have in store for him? Well, basically, it centered around a man sitting in a bar all afternoon, Tuesday, April 2nd, while DJ was sitting in his class in school. And his killer was having beers and decided he was going to share his irresponsibility with everybody else on the road that day. DJ drove, as you can see, a bright yellow and blue Jeep, and it was very heavy equipped. It had a big roll bar, and it was designed for off-road, so we felt he was safe in that car, but we'd not ever had to deal with a drunk driver. Never thought about it, wasn't part of our life. Certainly wasn't part of our son's life. So DJ left our driveway Tuesday morning with his big grin. And we were so excited because that evening we were going to chat all about going away to school to Notre Dame. 4:45 p.m. DJ was on the freeway almost directly across from here on I-80, heading east, waiting to exit onto 395. The traffic was stopped, and DJ was the last in a line of cars. And I can just imagine DJ sitting there, had his music on and windows down, and just thinking life is so good, and spring break is coming up that next weekend, and it's great. His killer left his place of drinking, driving down the freeway, I-80 going east, cutting across the lanes of traffic, endangering every single person that he met on the freeway that day, but encountered our son, who was stopped, waiting to exit, smashed into the back of DJ at 66 miles an hour. DJ was 0. The force of the impact so great, DJ blew up inside. In the blink of an eye, his precious life was gone. And in the blink of an eye, quite frankly, so was ours. DJ's Jeep had seatbelts in it that airline pilots wear, and he just couldn't survive a bomb on the freeway. So instead of chatting about going away to school and preparing for spring break, we're in a mortuary and we're picking out a casket. And we're just trying to figure out how to put one foot in front of the next, and how can this life be anything without him? And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this is 12 years later. DJ would have turned 30 this year in February. And it does not get better. And time doesn't heal. You just learn to cover it up better. His older brother is going to have his first baby in September, and the first thing I thought of when our older son told us that they were expecting was, he isn't going to get to know DJ as an uncle. And that's the way you base everything. Everything. There's pre-DJ and after DJ. And the reason that we're all in here, it's just incredibly ridiculous. He should be here just like we are, enjoying these beautiful summer days. When Deej left our driveway Tuesday morning, he had on his Notre Dame hat. I've kind of flattened it over the years, but this was on his head. And this is all that came home to us. This is what's left of DJ and his beautiful memories and a lovely legacy. But he should be here. And if we're going to take space on this earth, we darn well better do something good with it instead of trying to ruin each other. And it's such a simple solution. You just don't get behind a steering wheel. The end. And everybody knows that. It's not a surprise and it's not new news. And the ones that suffer, a beautiful 18-year-old boy, wonderful mama with 2 young children, Don, whose life has been severely altered, John, Michelle. These aren't things you just read about in a newspaper. This is all really real. Really, really real. So let's just do a good job together and make sure it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
I first started drinking when I was 12 years old. I met a group of friends at a park and we started hanging out. As I got out of middle school into high school, my drinking became a little more regular. There was always a party to go to. If there wasn't one, we'd make one. My family didn't find out that I had been drinking until I was probably 14, 15 years old. My parents tried confronting me, and I'd pretend to listen, but then every moment I could, or thought that I could get away with it, I'd be sneaking right back out. When I left high school and went to college, I met a group of friends, some fraternity guys. We started partying just about every day, and I'd be over there drinking and ditching class, and that's kind of how my college career went. I always considered myself a safe driver. I never got behind the wheel while drinking. I always wore my seatbelt. I always drove the speed limit. But that night was different. It was November 12th of 2011, and a friend of mine, Jennifer, had asked me to be her designated driver. And of course I said yes. And we went out and we hit a couple parties, and we were sitting at this second party. There was lots of liquor, music was going, and everybody was having fun, but I was kind of bored. And at that point, I think I told myself, 1 beer won't hurt. But 1 beer turned to 2, and 2 turned to 3, turned to shots. By the end of the night, I had a .14 BAC. The last thing I remember was sitting at a kitchen table and then waking up in a hospital room. I was in a coma for 7 days. When I woke up, nobody would tell me what was going on, what happened. They just wanted me to focus on getting better, on healing up. I had been scrolling on Facebook. A nurse had brought me a laptop in. But it was all the same things. Get well soon, Stephen. We love you, we miss you. But then I ran into this one post that made me remember why I was out that night. And it read, R.I.P. Jennifer. My friend came to visit me at the hospital, and I had to ask him, is Jennifer dead? And all he could do was nod. And he let me know that she was in the car with me, that we had been going too fast down 65 highway. When I got the accident reconstruction report back, it said we rolled 4.5 times. I wasn't wearing my seatbelt. I didn't make sure my passenger had on her seatbelt. We were both ejected from the vehicle. I went 150 feet, Jennifer nearly a football field. We had suffered similar injuries, spinal and lacerations, but the biggest one was the severe head trauma, in which we were both bleeding from the brain. I was life-flighted to University Hospital in Columbia, Missouri, and Jennifer to research in Kansas City. But at 9 a.m., November 13th, 2011, Jennifer died from severe brain trauma. I saw Jennifer's mother a few weeks after I was released from the hospital. She came over to check in, see how I was doing, and she wanted answers. She wanted to know what was going on that night, why we were out, why I was behind the wheel after I'd been drinking, why we hadn't called somebody. And I didn't know what to say. All I could say is, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. In December of 2013, I was convicted of involuntary manslaughter in the 1st degree. I was sentenced to 120 days in the Department of Corrections. And thereafter, I was sentenced to a 5-year probation term with a 5-year backup, meaning if at any point in time I got in trouble in those 5 years of probation, I would go back to the Missouri Department of Corrections for 5 years. I saw how much pain that I had put my family and my friends through after I was released from prison. And we go home, and the Christmas tree was still up. My dad wouldn't let anybody take it down until I was home. He couldn't have Christmas without me. And it was then that I realized how bad I really, really hurt my family. It was then I realized how bad I messed up, because if my family is hurting this much with me being gone 4 months, I can't imagine how bad Jennifer's family must be feeling right now. Because it's not going to be 4 months. It's not going to be another couple weeks, another couple days. They don't ever get to see her again. Mr. Smile, it was contagious. She could make anybody laugh, anybody have a good day. She could start a conversation with anybody. She was a great friend. She was a hard worker. Nobody ever thinks it could happen to them. I definitely didn't think it could happen to me. I thought I was smarter than that, better than that, but I found out it can happen to anybody if you just let your guard down for a minute. One mistake can change your life or somebody else's life forever.